It's a hard question, but I suppose I'd say World War II, because World War II really made the U.S. a world power and changed a fundamental thinking that came with American independence, which is that the United States, the founders of the country believed, should be separate from conflicts in Europe. Europe was corrupt. Europe was this old world that the U.S., that Americans had left and wanted to be free of. So American foreign policy was about avoiding those distant conflicts. And only with World War II, which the American leaders at the time, Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, and others, saw as a consequence of World War I, of not fixing the world after World War I, only with World War II did Americans become determined to play a permanent role in the world. That is, American isolationism ended and was replaced by America conceiving itself as a great power and eventually as a superpower. So I think looking back over 220 years of history, World War II was the most consequential. Well, you know, conflict, I suppose a premise of my current book, which is called Stripping Bare the Body, Politics, Violence, War, a premise of it is that at times of political stress and violence, certain salient facts about a society are revealed. I shouldn't say salient, that's not the right word. Certain important facts which may well have been hidden come out very clearly when a civil war is going on, when a revolution threatens to break out, when a society is attacked, for example, as the U.S. was on September 11th, 2001, that those violent episodes bring to the surface conflicts or potential conflicts that were latent up to then. And I guess a premise of the time I've spent reporting on wars is that you're seeing a society at time of revolution or war or coup d'etat, whatever, at its most interesting and, in a sense, at its most true. I mean, that's very much a value judgment, of course. One of the things 9/11 did was show the vulnerability of democratic politics, which of course Americans, and not only Americans, but certainly Americans, regard as their great strength. That is, they regard themselves as the leading democracy in the world. 9/11, in effect, and we're looking at it now, of course, nearly 10 years after, showed the vulnerability of democratic politics to the strangling grip of fear. Fear is a powerful political emotion. I've written that it's the most lucrative political emotion. And I mean by that a politician can look at fear and say, if I can make a polity or a constituency fearful, I can persuade them of certain things. Which is to say that fear separates out the essentials from the peripheral. If we're worried about our lives, we're willing to make certain judgments about what's important that we would not make in times of peace. And we saw that during the Balkan Wars. We certainly see that in the United States after 9/11. You know, when it comes to worrying about your life, well, if we have to torture a few Muslim prisoners, we're willing to do it. And if our politicians tell us that we have to, we're willing to support those politicians, which President Obama has found out since his election and the difficulties he's had in closing Guantanamo, for example. The election of Barack Obama has further introduced, it seems to me, a notion of realism into American foreign policy. You'll notice that President Obama doesn't talk about nation building. And indeed, when he announced that he was going to send an additional 30,000 troops to Afghanistan, a decision that was only announced after a painfully protracted process of consultation and what should we do and should we leave and should we stay and so on. So the whole question was up in the air. But when he finally announced his decision to increase troops, he was very careful to say, along with the decision to send more, was a decision to start withdrawing them at a date certain, which is to say the summer, July in particular, of 2011. So on the one hand, I'm sending 30,000 more troops. On the other hand, there's going to start to come out in July 2011. So they had a kind of expiration date. And I would say that that expiration date is an expression of a somewhat maturing attitude on the part of Americans when it comes to what their power can accomplish in the world and the limits of their own power, which I think is rather healthy, in my opinion.